In the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, monsters have levels that determine whether or not you can normal summon them without having to tribute other monsters. While levels 1 to 4 can be normal summoned regularly, levels 5 and higher require 1 to 2 tributes to be normal summoned. Level 5 monsters require 1 tribute to be normal summoned, meaning that level 5 monsters will have to be good enough to warrant the tribute in the first place. This was especially true during the classic era of Yu-Gi-Oh, where the ways to special summon monsters were few and far between. This list is the best of those level 5 monsters from the classic era before the first synchro monsters were printed. And starting off our list at number 10, we have Armed Dragon level 5. A level 5 wind dragon with 2400 attack and 1700 defense. It was first released in 2004's Soul of the Duelists and most recently reprinted in 2022's Speed Duel GX Duel Academy box. Armed Dragon level 5's effect allows you to send one monster from your hand to the graveyard to target a monster your opponent controls with attack equal to or less than the attack of the monster you send to the grave. If this is uninterrupted, the targeted monster is destroyed. Additionally, during the end phase of the turn that Armed Dragon level 5 destroys a monster by battle, you can send level 5 to the grave to special summon Armed Dragon level 7 from your hand or deck. Level 5's ability to pitch a card to destroy a monster is nothing to scoff at. While the cost to trigger level 5's targeted monster destruction effect isn't the best, a deck can be easily designed to have a greater quantity of high attack monsters for this effect. Because the effect sends monsters to the grave as cost, you can easily sprinkle in light and dark attribute monsters in your deck to send for the summoning conditions of Chaos Sorcerer and Blackluster Soldier Envoy of the beginning. Armed Dragon level 5's 2400 attack is pretty standard for a 1 tribute monster at the time, and lets it punch over some weaker monsters fairly easily. This allows level 5 to swap out for level 7 without much trouble. Armed Dragon level 7 is no slouch himself, as he can do a similar pitch destroy effect, except instead of targeting a single monster, it affects all monsters your opponent controls. Armed Dragon level 5 seems really good, right? So why is it so low on this list? Well, there are a multitude of factors that play into that. For starters, the win attribute has been notoriously weak throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, including this era, so you won't be gaining many advantages from the attribute. Secondly, the discard cost for the pop isn't amazing, since you have to discard a monster with decent to high attack. Abyss Soldier and Tribe Infecting Virus both have the ability to remove monsters off the field, and can both use Sinister Serpent for the discard. You know, the card that returns to your hand from the grave every turn. Additionally, both Abyss Soldier and Trap Infecting Virus are normal summons, unlike Armed Dragon level 5, which is a tribute. While you can special summon level 5 using Armed Dragon level 3, that is unlikely to work considering level 3's poor stat line and requirement to survive until your next standby phase. As we continue this list, it will become more abundantly clear how strong level 5 monsters can be. And at number 9, we have Magical Marionette. A level 5 dark spellcaster with 2000 attack, 1000 defense, and first printed in 2003's Magician's Force. Its most recent reprint came in the 2023 Speed Duel Streets of Battle City. Magical Marionette gains a spell counter each time a spell card is activated and resolves. Each spell counter increases Marionette's attack by 200, and by removing 2 spell counters, you can target one monster on the field and destroy it. This effect isn't once per turn, so you can activate it as long as you have at least 2 spell counters on Magical Marionette. Obviously, Marionette seems like a card that can spiral out of control the longer it stays alive, right? So you might be inclined to think it is used in a deck that can keep it alive for a long time, or even in a rogue spell counter based strategy. However, Marionette actually had a spot as a level 5 option for reasoning gate decks. It makes a lot of sense considering just how many spells are played in that deck, but I suppose I should give a brief explanation to the viewers ignorant of the ludicrous power of Reasoning Gate. Reasoning is a spell card that lets your opponent select a level from 1 to 12, and then you excavate cards from the top of your deck until you reach a monster that can be normal summoned. If that monster is the same level as the one your opponent guessed, you send it to the graveyard. Otherwise, you get to special summon that monster instead. All other cards are then sent to the grave. Monster Gate lets you tribute one monster you control to excavate your deck until you hit a monster that can be normal summoned. You then get to special summon that monster and send the rest of the excavated cards to the grave. Combine these 2 cards in a deck filled with mostly spells and you can summon big monsters fast to gain a huge advantage on your opponent quickly. Since Magical Marionette will be special summoned, it takes no setup, and the deck is already filled to the brim with powerful spells. It's a cakewalk to clear your opponent's board with a combo of spells and Marionette's effect. Additionally, Marionette's dark attribute works well with the Chaos monsters, which aid in the big payoff for a Reasoning Gate deck, a Dimension Fusion OTK play. While Magical Marionette is great, it has a very limited niche, and it's overshadowed by more generic level 5s. The next monster on our list is actually a great one to counter Marionette. And at number 8, we have Spell Canceller, a level 5 wind machine monster with 1800 attack and 1600 defense. Just like the previous card on our list, Spell Canceller was first released in Magician's Force and was most recently reprinted in Speed Duel Cities of Battle City. While Spell Canceller is on the field, spells and their effects on the field can't be activated. Additionally, all activated spell effects on the field are negated. Spell Canceller is extremely similar to Imperial Order, while Canceller being just a bit harder to utilize. As with all level 5s, it requires 1 tribute to summon, which usually isn't a big ask. But with a pitiful 1800 attack, there are several normal summons that can punch over Canceller, which would normally make Imperial Order the easy pick. However, unlike Imperial Order, Spell Canceller didn't get completely destroyed by the first list to ban cards. Instead, Spell Canceller found a nice niche combating spell-heavy decks. While not every deck could utilize Spell Canceller effectively, there was a deck that managed to top running 3 copies. The Answer. A deck named and piloted by Nate got a top 8 spot at SJC Houston 2005. The deck featured very few spells and a slew of removal cards in the form of monsters and traps. Backing up Spell Canceller was King Tiger YGO, a walking floodgate monster who automatically destroys any monster summoned with 1400 or less attack. When combined with Light of Intervention, a continuous trap that prevents monsters from being set or flipped face down, Spell Canceller would be protected from being flipped by commonly played Tsukiyomi, and allowed King Tiger YGO to kill any problematic flip monsters like Night Assailant or Old Vindictive Magician. And Sakuretsu Armor took out any beefy monsters trying to break the lockdown that Spell Canceller and King Tiger YGO presented. Outside of The Answer, Spell Canceller could be used as a side deck card to counter your opponent in a Reasoning Gate mirror match. Spell Canceller's weaknesses are fairly obvious. It takes a lot to protect if you're trying to keep it on the field for several turns. However, unlike many classic cards, Canceller still sees the occasional top in the side deck of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, often appearing in spell-heavy formats. But now we move on to the fusion monster power block of the list. And starting off the power block at number 7, we have Reaper on the Nightmare, a level 5 dark zombie fusion monster with 800 attack and 600 defense. First printed in 2003's Pharaonic Guardian, and was only reprinted once in 2005's Dark Revelation Volume 1. Reaper on the Nightmare's fusion materials are Spirit Reaper and Nightmare Horse. Much like Spirit Reaper, Reaper the Nightmare can't be destroyed by battle, but is destroyed when it's targeted by a card effect. It can attack your opponent's life points directly, getting around any pesky monsters in the way. When Reaper does do damage to your opponent's life points, your opponent has to discard 1 random card from their hand. Reaper on the Nightmare acts pretty much like a meaner version of Spirit Reaper, allowing you to get off Reaper on the Nightmare's discard effect far easier. While Reaper on the Nightmare is harder to summon than its materials, thanks to the magic of Metamorphosis, summoning Reaper is as easy as summoning a level 5 monster. To keep explanations brief, Metamorphosis lets you special summon a fusion monster by tributing a monster of the same level you control. However, they aren't properly fusion summoned. While Reaper on the Nightmare is a good Metamorphosis summon, it does have some marks against it. Typically, when using Metamorphosis, you want to trade out a weaker monster for a stronger one, or a monster with a one-time use effect for a monster with a once-per-turn effect, and the latter trade often coming after attacking with the monster. In Reaper's case, you need to tribute the monster before your battle phase to make full use of Reaper's discard effect. And while Reaper can't be destroyed by battle, you do leave yourself open to a walloping with only an 800 attack monster. Additionally, to make Reaper, you have to go -2 in card advantage, to make your opponent go -1 in card advantage. This means you have to attack with Reaper twice to break even. You can mitigate the cost and card advantage by using an opponent's monster that has been stolen as tribute, as that would mean both players go -2. These issues are why Reaper is on the lower end of the fusion monsters on this list, as the next 2 are far easier to swap in. And at number 6, we have Fiend Skull Dragon, a level 5 Wind Dragon fusion monster with 2000 attack and 1200 defense. He was first released in 2003's Legacy of Darkness, and was most recently reprinted in 2013's Legendary Collection 4, Joey World. Fiend Skull Dragon's fusion materials are Cave Dragon and Lesser Fiend, and can only be fusion summoned by using the correct materials. Fiend Skull Dragon is always considered an Arcfiend card. Fiend Skull Dragon has a continuous effect to negate the effects of all flip monsters on the field, as well as an effect to negate and destroy any trap card that targets it specifically. So, Fiend Skull Dragon clearly has a great floodgate effect, while also being annoying to remove from the field. Flip effects make up a bulk of the best effect monsters during this era, making their inclusion in most decks mandatory. Flip monsters like Magician of Faith and Mask of Darkness can return cards from your graveyard to your hand, while monsters like Dekoichi the Battle-Chanted Locomotive and Dark Mimic level 1 can draw you a card. Fiend Skull Dragon simply says no to them while easily punching over them. While you can get the same anti-flip effect from the continuous Trap Royal Command, that would take up precious space in the main deck, while Fiend Skull Dragon is part of the fusion deck, which didn't have a 15 card limit like the extra decks we have today. There's not much bad to say about Fiend Skull Dragon. Its attack could be a little higher for level 5, but 2000 isn't bad. The low defense makes Fiend Skull Dragon a prime target for Book of Moon, as many normal summon monsters will be able to punch over a meager 1200. The targeted trap protection is great for protecting it against commonly played Raigeki Break and Ring of Destruction. Of course, protection against all traps would have been better, saving Fiend from the likes of Mirror Force and Torrential Tribute. There is only one Metamorphosis target that's better in most situations, and it's the next card on our list. Our number 5 spot goes to Dark Balter the Terrible, a level 5 Dark Fiend fusion monster with 2000 attack and 1200 defense, just like the previous card on our list. It was also first released in 2003's Legacy of Darkness. However, its last reprint was all the way back in 2006 as a Hobby League participation card. Dark Balter's fusion materials are Possessed Dark Soul and Frontier Wise Man, and it must be fusion summoned with these materials. When a normal spell is activated, Dark Balter can negate the effect of the spell by paying 1000 life points. When Dark Balter destroys a monster by battle, the effects of the destroyed monster are negated. Dark Balter's spell negate does some heavy lifting in early formats, as Imperial Order was swiftly banned, and other spell negates were either highly specialized or just had a worse cost. At 1000 life points a spell, you can negate 7 spells without any form of life gain, incentivizing your opponent to destroy Dark Balter before playing out their turn. This alone is enough to stall at least one turn, if not more depending on how well you protected them. Dark Balter's ability to negate the effects of monsters it destroyed by battle helps when dealing with flip monsters, and monsters with floating effects, weakening your opponent's capability to recover and maintain card advantage. Dark Balter doesn't have the same protection as Reaper on a Nightmare or Fiend Skull Dragon, making Dark Balter far easier to destroy. Only being able to negate normal spells doesn't protect it from the same Book of Moon play that can be used to punch over Fiend Skull Dragon. However, there is definitely more pressure to do so when combating Dark Balter. That's the beauty of using Dark Balter. Even if you don't negate a single spell, they are a problem your opponent has to spend resources dealing with if they want to play the game properly. This is enough to edge out the competition for the best level 5 Metamorphosis target. The next monster on our list returns us to the main deck. The number 4 spot on this list goes to Airknight Parshath, a level 5 light fairy monster with 1900 attack, 1400 defense, and was first printed in 2003's Legacy of Darkness. Its most recent reprint came in 2024's Speed Duel Battle City Finals. If Parshath attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing battle damage. Additionally, when it inflicts damage, you draw a card. Piercing battle damage is normally just a decent additional effect in the modern meta of Yu-Gi-Oh! But back then, it was common for it to be the sole effect of some monsters. Piercing damage is actually really good in an era defined by low defense flip monsters and scapegoat tokens. Maybe not enough to be the only effect a monster has, but good enough to run some version of it in your deck. Airknight Parshath achieved a level generic goodness by adding a draw on any battle damage it deals. Parshath replaces itself in your hand the first time you do damage. If you can keep Parshath alive, it will soon make up for its tribute costs and even start netting you more cards than its cost in the first place. Parshath is even better if you can special summon him using a card like Reasoning, so you can get started drawing cards faster. Another big help Parshath brings to a deck is its attribute, as Chaos decks often struggle to find good light cards for their decks. If Parshath has one huge weakness, it would have been its miserable 1900 attack. It's low for one tribute that you'd expect to attack with frequently, and 1900 isn't even enough to attack over a Gravekeeper Spy, which would allow your opponent to swarm the board with another Gravekeeper monster. It also has no protections, so even though it can stampede over most monsters, it can't handle any removal effects they could potentially have. Still, Parshath easily earns a high spot on our list, with the final 3 monsters on our list being the juggernauts of the era. And in spot number 3, we have Zaborg the Thunder Monarch, a level 5 light thunder monster with 2400 attack and 1000 defense. It was first released in 2004's Ancient Sanctuary and was most recently reprinted in 2025's Quarter Century Stampede. If you tribute summon Zaborg the Thunder Monarch, you target one monster on the field and destroy it. This effect isn't optional, so if Zaborg is the only monster on the field, it has to destroy itself. To get out of the way, Zaborg is the only level 5 amongst the original Monarchs. As it's clear, Konami was still thinking about the definite features that the rest of the archetype should have during the era, which ended up being level 6 monsters with 2400 attack, 1000 defense, and effects on Tribute Summon. Zaborg's effect was good enough to carry them as the best Monarch all the way until Rise of the Storm Monarchs released in 2007's Force of the Breaker. Zaborg offers a solid monster removal on par with trap cards, while still offering a huge body on the field. Zaborg's 2400 attack is really good compared to many 1 tribute monsters, as our list has clearly shown. Additionally, with all other 1 tribute main deck monsters, your opponent's monster is usually preferred, with Brain Control, Snatch Steal, and Soul Exchange being favorites amongst the Monarch cards. Zaborg's main issue is the mandatory nature of its effect. Without a monster on your opponent's side of the field, Zaborg ends up as a dead card in hand. While most of the Monarch cards are mandatory, later Monarchs like Rise of the Storm Monarch and Kai's the Shadow Monarch alleviated this flaw by targeting back row cards as well. Still, those Monarchs aren't available in the earlier formats of Yu-Gi-Oh!, allowing Zaborg to have a nice, comfortable space in many decks. Our number 2 spot goes to Thunder Dragon, a level 5 light thunder monster with 1600 attack and 1500 defense. It was first printed in 2002's Metal Raiders and was most recently reprinted in the 2023's 25th anniversary version of the game. Thunder Dragon can be discarded from your hand to add up to 2 copies of itself from your deck to your hand. This effect isn't once per turn, so you can use it as many times as there are Thunder Dragons in your deck. Remember the whole not having enough light monsters problem mentioned in the Airknight Parshath entry? Thunder Dragon is the most common fix to that problem. You send 1 to the grave to get more copies from the deck, so you can get a light monster in your grave as fast as possible. While you can choose to add 1 copy at a time, most players will choose to add both. It may initially seem more beneficial to add 1 Thunder Dragon at a time, as you can then send 2 to the grave on the same turn. There is a solid reason not to, as Thunder Dragon makes for easy discard fodder for other cards. One common tactic includes adding both Thunder Dragons from deck to hand before using Graceful Charity, as the choice of what 2 cards to discard becomes a no-brainer. Other good cards that require a discard are Phoenix Wing Windblast and Raigeki Break, both of which are great for controlling the board state. Thunder Dragon doesn't really have any major downsides. The attack and defense stats could be a lot better, but the only reason you'd ever summon Thunder Dragon is to utilize it as a level 5 Metamorphosis target anyway. Even if you draw 2 Thunder Dragons in your opening hand, you can still discard 1 to get the last copy. Really, Thunder Dragon is a great deck thinning, discard fodder monster that can fit in most decks. Even with its great utility, Thunder Dragon is no match for the top monster on our list, whose use was pretty much universal. And the number 1 spot on our list easily goes to Cyber Dragon, a level 5 light machine monster with 2100 attack, 1600 defense, and was first printed in 2005's Cybernetic Revolution. Its most recent reprint was in 2024's Quarter Century Bonanza. Cyber Dragon can be special summoned from your hand if your opponent is the only player that controls a monster on the field. This means going second, you basically have a free 2100 attack monster. This was a huge deal, because before this, whoever went second was at a major disadvantage. Not only did the player going first get to draw a card, the second turn player was subject to annoying hand rips, and it had no hand traps to interrupt any of your opponent's plays. Cyber Dragon helped the turn 2 player recover immensely, offering a huge body to run over monsters with, or a free sacrifice for a tribute summon. These factors alone allowed Cyber Dragon to see universal play at 2 to 3 copies in every deck. Chaos Engines enjoyed having another good light monster in their deck. Monarchs enjoyed the free tribute fodder, and machine decks gained the extra power they needed OTK opponents utilizing limiter removal. The story doesn't end there though, as in both its debut set, Cybernetic Revolution, and the sequential sets, Cyber Dragon received a slew of support. In Cybernetic Revolution, both Cyber Twin Dragon and Cyber End Dragon were printed, alongside the machine fusion spell Power Bond, which made OTKs extremely easy since it doubled the attack of the machine fusion monster that it summons. Both Twin and End Dragon could be cheated out with Cyberstein, meaning you didn't even have to fusion summon them properly. Cyber Dragon would reach its full potential in 2006 with the release of Power of the Duelist set, which contained the first prints of Chimera Attack Over Dragon and Overload Fusion. When Chimera Attack was combined with Overload Fusion, it could single-handedly wipe out your opponent's monsters and OTK them, as Chimera Attack got additional attacks and higher attack stats for each monster used for its fusion. And Overload Fusion lets you use monsters on your side of the field and the graveyard for the fusion. This led to both Cyber Dragon and Overload Fusion getting limited. If all of this hasn't made it clear, there is a reason GOAT format ends right before Cybernetic Revolution, because Cyber Dragon fundamentally changed the way the game was played. But did you expect any less from the top spot in our list?